Utilitarianism is the view in which where there is more happiness and less suffering that results from our actions, the better the action is. Any other action than what makes us happiest is morally wrong. Utilitarians focus more on the consequences of their actions rather than the motives itself. Utilitarianism is also a form of consequentialism, meaning that one's act will determine the outcome. For example, if one does a morally wrong act, they must suffer the consequences. Another name for utilitarianism is the greatest happiness principle. This philosophy is said to prove that actions are good when they lead to a higher level of general happiness, and are bad when they decrease and pain and suffering occur. John Stuart Mill, the philosopher of utilitarianism, was born on May 20th, 1806 in London, United Kingdom. Mill died as of May 8, 1873, at Avignon, France. His ideas of his philosophy rooted from John Locke, George Berkeley, and David Hume, and in the utilitarianism of Jeremy Bentham. John Stuart Mill was best known for being an economist, moral and political theorist, administrator, and of course, a British philosopher. Mill is best known for writing utilitarianism and On Liberty, as he shares his utilitarian and liberal principles in these notable works. Over the course of Mill's life, he decided to add his own views about Jeremy Bentham's fragments on utilitarianism. Mill himself was an empiricist, meaning that all his knowledge comes from sense experience. The ultimate goal of utilitarianism, Mill argues, is to achieve such happiness for the majority of people, to do as one would be done by, and to love one's neighbor as oneself, constitute the ideal perfection of utilitarian morality. John Stuart Mill himself states that utilitarianism is based on the assumption that actions are right in proportion as they tend to promote happiness, wrong as they tend to produce the reverse of happiness. As a result, pleasure can differ in quality and quantity. Happiness, according to Mill, is morally important, as people strive for this joyous feeling and nothing but happiness. John Stuart Mill mainly inherited the idea of utilitarianism from Jeremy Bentham. In the 18th century, Jeremy Bentham supported women's rights, animal rights, separation of church and state, economic liberalism, the abolition of slavery, and the decriminalization of homosexual acts. Many of these controversies still coincide with today's problems. In its political philosophy, utilitarianism bases the authority of government and the sanctity of individual rights upon their utility, thus providing an alternative to theories of natural law. Utilitarianism can be broken down into two different categories: the value of theory and the theory of right action. The value of theory states that happiness in the absence of suffering is most valuable. Tangible items, for example, money or goods we don't necessarily need, are said to cause happiness for many. The theory of right action produces most of what is valuable. Utilitarianism's influence is widespread and is very significant in law, politics, and economics. In Mill's novel Utilitarianism, he describes a connection between justice and utility. He notes that it is considered unjust to deprive someone of his legal rights. He proves that utilitarianism is opposed to justice and defends rights under utility. In Utilitarianism, he also writes that there are two factors to justice. The first is the desire to punish a person who has done harm. The other component is that there is an identifiable victim who suffers if justice is infringed upon. John Stuart Mill also adds Jeremy Bentham's philosophy and emphasizes that 1. It is not the quantity of pleasure, but the quality of happiness that is central to utilitarianism. Qualities cannot be quantified, therefore, the calculus is unreasonable. And 3. Utilitarianism refers to the greatest happiness principle, seeking to promote the capability of achieving happiness for the most amount of people. In John Stuart Mill's book On Liberty, he writes, "The peculiar evil of silencing the expression of an opinion is that it is robbing the human race, posterity as well as the existing generation, those who dissent from the opinion, still more than those who hold it. If the opinion is right, they are deprived of the opportunity of exchanging error for truth. If wrong, they lose, what is almost as great a benefit, the clearer perception and livelier impression of truth produced by its collision with error." The impact of utilitarianism. Who impact utilitarianism, you may ask? The principles of this philosophy have been impacted by many philosophers mentioned earlier, especially John Stuart Mill and Jeremy Bentham. Jeremy Bentham stated his beliefs of benefits and disadvantages in terms of pleasure and pain. John Stuart Mill, on the other hand, stated the benefits and disadvantages in terms of quality of pleasure and pain. Utilitarians today apprehend both the advantages and the disadvantages in economic terms or even in personal preference. Utilitarianism had a large impact on the Industrial Revolution. The utilitarian principle of happiness allowed the pursuit of individual happiness, in this case, wealth, as morally good. The Industrial Revolution was thought to have increased the power of individual and extended his potential for the consumption of goods and services.